Hello, good evening, everyone. You're all welcome once again to the IMANI Reveals show. I'm glad to see you all again after 1 week. Um, we'll pray. I'll kindly ask Selassie, please, if you can you lead us in our opening prayer? Selassie,
Hello.
Yes, Selassie.
Oh, I just go home. I just go home in a meeting. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. Should I call someone?
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Angie. Angie.
Hi, Abby.
Yeah, can you please pray with us?
Okay.
Thank you.
Lord Jesus, thank you so much for your goodness and your faithfulness to us. Thank you for bringing us together once again to discuss different issues and matters of life. Thank you that because we are together in your name, you'll be with us. Thank you that every discussion will be fruitful. Thank you that we will learn many lessons from the things that will be talked about. And that at the end of it, your glory will be seen. We give you glory and praise for answered prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. So like I mentioned, in case you're wondering, this is the IMANI Reveals show where we speak, we are real so that we can live. And today I'm excited to have two friends of mine. We're going to talk about the PhD program. I've heard before that, well, I've heard people say or refer to it as the deep dark hole. I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, we'll hear what Baaba and Melissa have to say. I won't say much. I'll allow them to introduce themselves and then they can take off. So I'll let Baaba speak first. She pursued her PhD here in Ghana, and Melissa did hers in the States. So it's good that we have that comparison. And Angie, you're still pursuing yours in UK, so I'm sure you can give us some information about how it's going there as well. So Melissa and Baaba, you can unmute your mics and then activate your videos. Let's see you. Hi, Baaba.
Hello.
Is Melissa there?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Okay, so since Baaba will be going first, Melissa, you introduce yourself, and then Baaba will introduce herself and take it away.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I can't really see anyone else apart from Baaba and Abigail, but I can see the names, and I'm happy to be here. My name is Melissa, as is shown on the screen. Some of you know me. I know some of you. I'm happy to share as much as I can tonight. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, Baaba.
Hello, everybody. As Melissa said, I'm also very excited. When Abby asked me to do this, I was like, okay. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm Baaba da-Costa Vroom. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana School of Public Health. So thank you.
Thank you. So as always, we'll have them share. And if you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat or during the Q&A session, you raise your hand and I'll call you and you ask them. Yes, so basically that'll be it. So Baaba, you can go ahead and share your PhD experience.
PhD experience. Where do I start from? Let me start from the beginning. So, most people will have a dream of what they want to do in future and have, a fair idea, even if they don't know how they're going to achieve it. They have a fair idea of what they want to do, or they might start planning towards it. So I'm one of those people who had no idea where I was going. So I would say that after I finished my master's degree, which was for me the ultimate, when I finished my master's, I told everybody I was done. There was nothing like, and I even did an MSc. So I was encouraged to do an MPhil, and I said, no way, I'm not going to do it because, academia is not my style, and, I'm done. So that was my mindset. So after my master's, I started working, and I think about 2.5 years into my work, I got invited to teach part-time at the School of Public Health. Now, I did my master's at the School of Public Health in health informatics. So one of my senior colleagues who was on faculty full-time at the time, just called me one day and said, Baaba, you know what, we just started a Bachelor of Public Health, and we need, staff, we need part-timers. So are you interested? Would you mind coming in to just teach one course? And I said, sure, why not? I'll be happy to do that. And this is from somebody who said she would never teach, never be in academia. So I'm not, now that I'm even saying this, I don't even know why I said yes. I think maybe I was just excited about doing something else apart from the work I was doing at the time. I think also I was having some challenges at work. So I had a good job. It wasn't paying well, but I was excited about the prospects for the future. So I was, happy in that line. But there were a few issues that were coming up, which made me want to look at other opportunities. So at the time, I wasn't really thinking of switching, but I was thinking of doing something to add on to what I was already doing. So I think when he mentioned it, I was like, okay, that's nice. So I got excited about it. And then I started teaching, I think in October, I think October 2010. So it was just one BPH class, and I agreed to take them in the evening. So once a week after work, I'd drive to School of Public Health. Luckily, I was working in East Legon, so then it was an easy drive for 2 hours, and then I would head home. So I think sometime in December, my head of department there just sort of, I don't know, because I'd never spoken about going full-time. For me, it was a part-time thing. It was just something extra that I was doing. So he said, well, so when are you bringing in your application? I said, what application? So he said, well, we thought you'll be coming on full-time. I said, no, it's not something I had considered. He said, well, think about it. But then he kept asking every now and then. So I discussed it with my husband, and I said, you know what, if I do this, it means I'm going to academia. And I said, I'll never do it. And sometimes when you say you're never going to do something, you really want to stick to that. So and my husband said, well, you're going to do it because I know you can do it. And I said, well, then it means I have to do a PhD. And I've also said I'll never do a PhD. So he said, you're going to do it. So before I realized, I had put in my full-time application for a full-time. And then so I had a good interview, and I got accepted. Much to my, I really wasn't quite sure where I was going, actually. So then I took it up. All I knew is that I enjoyed teaching. So I took it up in January or 2011, and then I resigned from my previous job. So I started teaching, and then I started looking at PhD programs because I said, well, since I'm there, it means I have to do it. Then the current Vice Chancellor of UHAS was our Vice Dean. So I got in there, and then I think within a couple of months, he started, requesting that I go over to see him. I think he called me 3 times to his office, and all 3 occasions, for some reason, I didn't take him seriously, or I wasn't sure. I heard the messages, but I forgot about them. But then he kept insisting I go to see him. And then he told me he has a project, and he wants to take me on as a PhD student. So he wants to know if I'm interested. So I said, okay. Again, also without really knowing what the whole project was about and everything. It was like I was just flowing without really thinking too much into what I was doing. So I got accepted on the project, and that's actually how I met Abigail and we became friends. So that's where my journey started. And I think it was quite an interesting journey. It's a journey that I don't regret 1 minute being on that journey. And I also think that the hand of God always has a way of directing you to where you're supposed to be. Because for somebody who said, I will never teach, and then I found myself teaching, and then I will never do a PhD, and then also found myself in a PhD program. Sometimes I said, and it baffles my mind how I've actually come this far, and the fact that I actually enjoy what I'm doing. So it's been a great experience. It was a very difficult experience. Let me not mince my words. It was a very difficult experience, and we'll get into those details a little bit later. But as I said here, I know that I don't regret making that decision and, following the leading of God, because, I think sometimes when you say you're not going to do something and you're very stubborn about it, he will steer you where he wants you to go. And there's one thing I've also realized, that when you pray a prayer and tell God that lead me, guide me, show me what you want me to do, lead me into my purpose, when you resist, he will guide you there sometimes without you even realizing he's leading you there. And then before you realize, you're walking where you're supposed to be. So I think, Abby, I don't know whether I should stop here, and then if you have any questions or if you want me to continue.
Okay, so I think, you can hold on here.
Okay.
I'll allow Melissa to also say how hers started, and then
Okay.
I'll ask some of the questions that I sent you earlier, and both of you can answer one after the other.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
All right. So, Mel,
Sure.
how was your beginning?
Baaba, thank you so much for sharing. Some of the things that you shared dovetailed nicely with my story, especially the parts about God leading and us praying and having him decide where we should go, and trying to allow ourselves to toe that line. So my story is similar in that sense, but there are some differences, and hopefully those parts will also be helpful to people. So again, my name is Melissa, Washington-Nortey. I grew up in Ghana. I got my degree in psychology at the University of Ghana. And then after that, I had the opportunity to leave the country and then pursue a master's degree first, and then a PhD after that. And so how did my story start? I've started telling my story a little bit already. It started in Ghana. I completed my degree in psychology. And for those of us who know about the field of psychology, at the time, at least, that was the case. It was the case that if you were pursuing psychology and you wanted to go further in the field, you really couldn't do much in Ghana without a master's degree at the very least, or a PhD. And I wanted to work in the field of psychology. I always wanted to work with children. And so I knew that a postgraduate degree of some sort was in the future for me. So that was my plan. I was a teaching assistant in the Department of Psychology during my national service year. And it was at that time that I was exploring opportunities. So I had applied for a program in the US, and then I had also applied for another program in the Department of Psychology at University of Ghana. And I I didn't get the opportunity to, or an invitation to start the program in the US. So I was quite disappointed about that. But I, at the same time, was invited to interview for the program in University of Ghana. I thought that would go well. The interview did go well, and I was thinking I might just start the program there. But coincidentally, I was working with a professor known as Charity Akutia at the time. And as God would have it, she was promoted in that same, around that same time, she became Dean of Social Sciences. And so by proxy, I became sort of the secretary to the Dean of Social Sciences. And she also received, she received an invitation from some professors in the University of Haifa in Israel around that time. They were starting a new program, a master's in child development, and she knew I always wanted to work with children. And she asked me, so Melissa, what do you think about this program? And I said, well, yeah, it's not clinical psychology, but it's with children, and I love working with children. So why not? Let's see. Let's just put an application in, see where it goes. So I did that. There was what's known as a pre-application, where you start an application process, you send that in, and based on what they see, they let you know whether they're interested in you sending in the full application anyway. So I did that, sent it in by email, and they got back to me saying, oh, your work looks promising. Send us a full application. And when you send us your full application, submit it by a post. So I did that. And with FedEx, it was supposed to get there within 3 to 5 business days. Of course, it didn't get there within 3 to 5 business days. It took almost a month for it to get there. And in that period, the folks from Israel came to Ghana to interview people who had applied for the position. So here I was, I had applied for the position, but nobody had my documents because it was still somewhere in transit around that time. So they came. I was told to expect them. And because I was working with this professor, I also received them. But I knew that I wouldn't be interviewed that day because I didn't even have my documents. Nobody had my documents. And so it gave me some peace that I didn't have to stress out about meeting them. I didn't have to worry about an interview or what have you. But they came in, and strangely enough, that night, I couldn't really sleep. It doesn't usually happen to me. My sister is on the call, so she can vouch for me. Usually when I put my head down, I'm gone, and then I wake up and start the day. But that night at about 4, I just couldn't sleep. So I woke up and prayed. I prayed quite intensely for about 30 minutes. I didn't know what was going on. And then I slept again. And I think maybe God was trying to tell me, not maybe, I definitely know God was trying to tell me to do something, but I really didn't know what was going on. So I started that day, met the folks from Israel, just introduced them to the people who they needed to work with while they were there. And then my professor at the time, Charity Akutia, had told me to share with them that I had applied for the program. It was just that they had not received my application because of FedEx and everything that was going on there. So I did. And the professor from Israel said to me, oh yeah, we heard about your case. I mean, yeah, look at the itinerary. It's so booked. There's nothing here. There's no room. We can't even do anything, but we'll let you know if we can do something about your application or if we can interview you or something like that. So I said, okay, I've done what I was supposed to do. I'll continue doing my work with you and we'll see what happens. So we went through the day and they had a presentation. After the presentation, the presentation involved all people who had sent in their applications and whose applications had been received by the team. And so they finished that presentation and they were ready to interview individuals. And they decided to start with a group interview. So they called about 10 people to join the group interview, and one person was not there. One person had not made it yet. And so they said, well, since this person is not there, maybe Melissa, you can join them and then we'll see. So I was there. I joined them in that first group interview. I we started the interview, and whenever they would start by introducing somebody, they would pull out the person's application documents and then say, okay, so this is your name. These are the things that you wrote in your application. Can you tell us more about yourself? And as they went through the application process, or as the individual also shared about their experiences, they would compare that with what they had written. Of course, when they got to me, they had nothing. So they just wrote down my name, and I saw that they wrote down my name, Princess. That's all I really knew about that application process. After that group interview, they also had an individual interview. So they said at that time that, since I was working as well, maybe they should start the individual interviews with me, and then I could go on and continue my work in other areas. So I was the first person to be interviewed during the individual stage. After the interview, there were two people who interviewed me. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. They completed the interview, then started speaking in Hebrew while I was sitting there. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Is this normal? Isn't it a little rude to start speaking in your local language when the other person can't hear? But I just sat there, and afterwards they turned to me and said, well, we're going to do something that we really have never done before. We don't think we'll probably ever do again, but we liked you, and we would like to offer you an opportunity to join the program if you would join. I was like, oh, wow. Is this something that happens? Because I really I wasn't expecting to make the cut. For this program, they were hoping for somebody with at least 3 years of experience working with children. I didn't have any of that. I had taught, I had done some class assistant work after my secondary school education at the University of Ghana. But beyond that, in University Primary School. But beyond that, I hadn't worked with kids in any capacity. So I didn't meet that criteria. There were several other criteria that I didn't meet. And so to have an offer be placed before me right there and then was quite shocking for me. And they said, well, yeah, that's what we're offering you. And we will let you know in about 3 months' time, you will receive the letter. But it's really your decision to make. Know that you will get it. And so I left the room knowing that I had received this opportunity to go to Israel to study. And one of the things that really helped me to know that God was in it was something that Baaba shared as well, where sometimes you don't know where God is leading you, but he makes a way, and then you look back and you're like, oh, so maybe you were trying to get me to think about this thing at this particular time. Because there was a friend of mine who wanted to go to Israel about 3 months before my opportunity came up. And I said to him, Israel? Why Israel? What would you do there? Aren't you going to go somewhere else? Maybe somewhere more fun or exciting or what have you? And that was my first introduction to the idea of Israel. The second thing that made it really clear to me that God wanted me there was that someone in church in LIC, I was attending LIC at the time, met me after an all-night service. And she was someone who knew my mom, but she didn't know me personally. So she met me after the all-night service, asked me what I was doing. I told her that at the time that I was working as a teaching assistant, but I was also applying for schools in the US. And she said, oh yeah, okay, well, let me know how it goes. If you get an offer and you need any help, I am happy to help you. And usually the kinds of examples that people share with you let you know how much help they're willing to give. And so she said, if you need any help with like school fees or anything like that, just let me know. I was like, oh, wow, people offer to help people with school fees. That's really amazing. But I share that because this offer to go to Israel came with everything except airfare to Israel. And when that happened, I knew that God had already sorted out my airfare to Israel. And so I spoke to the lady, and she made good on her promise and flew me to Israel. That's how I ended up in Israel. And then after that, I knew at the time that it would become clearer what exactly I was supposed to do when I got to Israel. And it really was in Israel that I found out that I really, really loved developmental psychology and not clinical psychology per se. And then that was another story in itself, but I wrote an application to my program in the US within 2 hours after God took me through some processes to just take me out of the thought of doing a program in clinical psychology. And then it was after that I applied for the developmental psychology position at Virginia Commonwealth University, got in there, knew that I was supposed to be there, and the journey continued there. So that's a little bit of my story.
Wow. God's ways are indeed not our ways. I mean, he had to take you through Israel, for you to wake up to the fact that you actually was more interested in developmental psychology. That's amazing. I mean, and there's always a purpose. I mean, it might seem like, why would he go, all that length just so that he will show you exactly where you have to be? But there's always a purpose for he doing what he does. And that's interesting to hear and encouraging. In fact, I was just speaking with a friend of mine just before the show, and she was saying the same thing as Baaba said, that she's not an academic person. So she doesn't plan on pursuing PhD. Who knows? One day she might also come and share her testimony like you guys are doing. All right. Okay, so yeah, we'll go straight on. So the question is, does everyone need to have a PhD? And what should inform the decision to pursue a PhD? I know that you guys sort of just slid into it, but what do you think should inform someone pursuing PhD? So any of you can go.
I'll let Baaba go first.
All right, Baaba.
Okay. Should everyone? I would say no. I'll say no. Based on let me go with I'll go. I think I'll give two different answers, all pointing to saying no. But first of all, for me, I'll say that if you want to, you have to be clear on your career goals. All right. Sometimes I've had people who are in PhD programs or want to pursue PhD, and they have a mindset that it's just like a master's program. Okay, but there is a big difference between what you do in a master's program and what you do in a PhD training program. All right, so I think that unless you are still trying to navigate, but if you are just want to do a PhD for the sake of doing a PhD, I would say pause and think again. Because I think if you are interested in having a career in research, all right, or you are interested in having a career in academia, or there is a position you are eyeing that you think having a PhD will be an enabler, then I would say go for it right away. You can make that decision. And then, so when you are clear in your mind that this is what you're trying to achieve, it makes the journey easier, because it's a difficult journey. So for me, there is no point in pursuing something that you are wishy-washy about, or you're just pursuing for the sake of pursuing. You have to be clear, because when it gets tough, it is that goal that will actually push you forward and help you accomplish it. There are a lot of people who start PhD programs and don't finish. It's almost like they don't have enough gas to go on. So it's like you're running your car on maybe a quarter tank or a half a tank, and you're trying to climb a hill. All right. When you're climbing the hill, or maybe whatever, you might need a lot of gas to get up to the top. but then you get halfway and you realize that you run out of gas. Chances are you're just going to descend down. You're not going to be able to go up. So for me, you have to be clear on your career goals if you know that is what you want to do, because it helps you get to that destination. The other thing I'll say is that most PhD programs are 3 years, or if you pursue University of Ghana or US, then you're looking at potentially 4 years. Some people do it in 5 years, 6 years, you know. So for me, 3 years of your life is so precious that I can't imagine you just making a flimsy decision. So if you're going to use up those 3 years, and even when you're doing like a master's degree, that's 12 months. I always tell people who come to my office, it's 12 months of your life. You know, you can't afford to waste, because every day is precious. You can't afford to waste that time. So if you're not sure, pause a bit, think through it before you make that decision to take that step. All right. So for me, that's I'm looking at it from the point of view of your career goals, and also from the point of view of the amount of time you need to spend doing it. I'd rather use those 3 or 4 years doing something that I enjoy, something that is more productive, rather than just doing something that you're not sure that you even like, or you're just doing for doing sake, you know. And there are people who also just do it because they want the title. Some of us have the title and we don't even use it, you know. So it's not about the title. You have to be a bit clear on why you're doing it, you know. Because for me, even though it wasn't something that I said I would always do, when I started it, I knew that if for nothing at all, I wanted to maintain my faculty position. And you know, when you are in a university, it gets to a point where if you're not progressing, you'll be asked to leave. University positions are not permanent. So, you know, you are on contract, so you have to renew your contract. So if you are not showing any progress, then you're going to have to leave. And I realized that I enjoyed doing what I enjoyed doing what I was doing. And I needed a PhD to secure that thing. And so that was for me one of the goals, you know. So when it got tough, I was like, okay, I'm trying to achieve this thing. You know, I know there's something else God wants me to do with this thing, but I need this PhD to be able to jump and then get to that point. And so there was a clear goal that I needed to achieve, and that helped me a lot through the journey. Over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa.
Sure, I agree with what Baaba says. Definitely, it's not for everyone. The only thing I'll add is a PhD is really a research degree. It's not for practical work, although you can do practical work with it. You can work in a professional capacity after you're done with it. You can do field work after you're done with it, but it's really a research degree. And that sometimes people get in it and they think, oh, I'll do a PhD and then go to the corporate world after it. You can do that, but then by the time you're done, it's almost a waste of time, because you've spent a lot of time learning about research that you will not use in a corporate capacity. And so when you do that, it's almost like you've spent time that you could have invested gaining more skills in that corporate professional capacity, doing something else that may not necessarily benefit you in the corporate capacity. And so it's really, really a research degree. Most of the time when you go to universities, at least with my experience in the US, most professors train you to become a professor. And so by the time you're done with your training, you have skills as a teacher, you have skills as a researcher, and you are expected to produce in that capacity. If you're going there with the mindset that you're going into the corporate world afterwards, you may not get the mentorship you need, because the professors who are in the academic setting do not have that experience. They've not worked in a corporate setting before. And so you're asking them to give you basically what they themselves do not have. And sometimes it creates tensions because a student wants one particular goal. The professor thinks that they should do something else. And that's the reason why they invited them to even come and do the PhD program. And at the end of it, neither party is happy because they haven't gotten what they wanted out of it. So that PhD is really a research degree. That's all I'll add to it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's an eye-opener. Okay, so how does one prepare? I think you've said a bit about it, but practically, how do you prepare for a PhD? Because I remember I was reminding Baaba about a conversation we had and how they were sharing how they were literally traumatized at certain points, in the process. So how can you prepare physically, mentally, emotionally? I mean, all the L's. All right, this time, Melissa, you go.
Sure. I'll prefix what I'll say with this statement first. I think there's a limit to how much you can prepare for, because there are so many things that you will not be ready for, and they'll be thrust upon you and you have to swim and find your way through. But having said that, first of all, you need to know what you're setting yourself up for, in the sense like, one, what are your career goals, as Baaba has shared? Two, basic things like, how long is this program expected to take? Beyond what they tell you on paper, it's helpful to speak to people who have been through the program, because they will give you a good sense of the average amount of time that it takes an individual to get there, right? So sometimes you hear that a program lasts or is supposed to last 5 years. And then you meet other people in the same program, and on average, it's taking them about 6-7 years to do. You could be an excellent student, but you have to factor in the fact that those people are probably really good students as well. And so you may not be done with it in 3 years and go on with your life, right? And so things like that are an expectation that you should, or are things that you should prepare yourself for as you go into the program. And then you should also just be aware that no matter how much you love a particular field, if you're fortunate enough to start a PhD in a field that you know that you're really excited, you're really passionate about it, it will get tough. It will definitely get tough. And then you wonder, is this really what I signed up for? I thought it was going to be such a wonderful journey. It's so difficult. It's so, just traumatizing sometimes. But that's part of the process. There's the dream phase, and then there's the reality phase. And you shouldn't let the reality phase prevent you from pursuing that dream, right? So those are things that I think that we should all be mindful of when we're getting ready to start a PhD program. And then also know that even though a PhD journey is an individual journey, you don't walk alone. There you need your family, you need friends, and the degree to which you can find that wherever you are is critical. I had to find, and I would say I was really blessed to find good people, be in a community with great people around me. And I also had the support of my family, even though they were back home in Ghana. I mean, my sister is here. She's my buddy. I call her all the time. I talk to her all the time. She's been through this PhD with me. I told her that she has the period at the end of my PhD because she's suffered with me through the whole journey. And that has made a huge difference for me. So those are things that I think helped me prepare for the journey, and things that you should be mindful of when you're thinking of starting this journey. Baaba.
Thank you. I think, Melissa, you've touched on the key issues. So the mental preparation, I think, is probably one of the toughest, one of the key things that most people have to consider. Unfortunately, I would say that I wasn't prepared at all. I just knew I was going to do a PhD program. People said it was difficult. So I was still waiting to see what the difficulty was all about. And when I started, it seemed like it was a breeze. It was like, okay, I'm working full-time in a PhD program, and you're not really it's like you're just flowing, and then gradually the difficulties, start coming up. So I think for me, I'll say the mental preparation is very, very, very key. You need to have that toughness. Get ready and be ready to adapt to the changing seasons. It's like changing seasons of life. And the thing is, the PhD also, when you're doing your PhD, life doesn't stop. All right. So you have to have that mindset that you're going to go through that journey. And it's like, I don't mean to scare people, but it's like, it's a battle that you are going to have to fight. So you have PhD and you have life that you have to deal with. All right. So you just have to have that mental toughness. And then maybe the other thing I'll say is having a clear idea. Maybe the idea might not be clear, but having a general idea of what you are interested in, what you are interested in terms of research, because it helps you to make those concrete steps in choosing or coming up with a specific area or a specific idea that you want to pursue in your research. Because you sometimes have, and because of where I am now, I have the opportunity to interact with a number of PhD students, and I know somebody who keeps changing their topic, and it's because they haven't even found or identified their interest. But if you know your interest, you don't have to go in with a topic. If you have an area of interest, it helps you to focus and pursue that interest. So Melissa talked about, realizing that she's interested in developmental psychology. So then maybe there's something in developmental psychology that she was interested in. Could be general, but, not having picked a specific topic. So that general idea, when you start reading about it, then it helps you to start shaping what you want to do. Then that sort of helps you reduce the pressure in the first year or first year and a half when you're trying to come up with the proposal and all that. And even it makes it easier when you are speaking to your professors and your mentors. So when they know what you are interested in, they can help you start shaping the idea. But when you go and you are a blank sheet and it's like you're waiting for them to fill you, chances are you might not get that opportunity. I was in a position where the project I was in had a specific area that they wanted me to focus on. My background is in information systems and then health informatics. And the project area was in mHealth, all right, which was directly in my area. So it was an easy area for me to get into. I didn't have to think too much. I had to shape the story to suit what was needed for the project. And that was okay with me. But sometimes when you go in and you are waiting for your professor to tell you, go and do this, go and do that, it's like you are an adult and you are being trained. And at the same time, they are not going to tell you what to do. It's like, tell us what you want to do and we'll help you do it. That is the idea that you have to. So you don't go into a PhD program thinking that you are going to be spoon-fed. All right. Otherwise, most people, depending on which professor you meet, they might give up on you. All right. So you have to have an interest, and then you have to psychologically start telling yourself that you have a journey that you're going to make, and no matter what, you're going to finish that journey.
Yeah, I'll add something to what Baaba has shared based on my experience. So I did my PhD in the US, and in the US, options are everything. So you go to a place and you start with an idea, but so many things will be thrown at you. And that there's a good part and a bad part to it, right? Because you get the opportunity to see so many other things that you could be doing and so many other people that you could be working with. So you need to find out, is what I came here in, or the interest that I came here with, is that sufficient for me, or do I want to explore something else? Because sometimes you start in an area, you get involved in it, and you realize it's not really for you. And I think sometimes it takes some courage to say that, even though I thought I was quite passionate about this, if it's not working out too well and there's something else I can do, I should do it and not, bury my head in the sand and think that it's all over. Now, the other option, the other part of it is you could get swayed by all the options and then finish the program and you have no field or no specialization, because that's also another really, really important thing about a PhD. You're being trained as a researcher in a particular field with a particular specialization. So for instance, I'm a developmental psychologist, but I'm a child developmental psychologist. And within that, I also specialize in children with developmental disabilities like autism and intellectual disabilities, right? So those are specifications that I built within my training. If you go in and you're like, oh yeah, I want to work with children, but what do you want to do with children? There are 20 other professors who work with children. You will need to find the time to read broadly, read extensively, and then begin to hone your skills in a particular area, because otherwise you would be the jack of all trades and the master of none. And that will make it more difficult for you to find a placement after you're done. So just to know about those opportunities too. It's good when opportunities come through, but we need to hone our skills. We need to find a particular path to toe.
Right. That's lots of good information. Okay, so we have a number of questions. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, so one is a contribution, but someone was asking earlier. Okay, so it's to Baaba. It says that I currently have an MSc. Can they grant me access into a PhD program? And the second question. I know very well I do not want to be an academic, but just want to be ready for any other opportunity, say in public service. Please advise. So he's not thinking of going into academia, but he wants to pursue the PhD just in case an opportunity comes where a PhD certificate or qualification is required.
Okay, so having an MSc doesn't stop you from getting a PhD. I went in with an MSc, and I think at the University of Ghana, at the time I got into the system, you didn't need an MPhil to get into a PhD program because the program had been changed. So what happened was I did 1 year MPhil. So it was supposed to be, and then I was upgraded into the PhD program. But currently at the University of Ghana, you can apply, come in with your MSc, and the PhD program is 4 years. So there's nothing like doing an MPhil before starting the PhD. And I think it's the same in a number of universities. So if you go in with an MSc, your professor might recommend maybe some courses or some other training that they think you need, and that can help you with your PhD research. If they feel there are gaps, in your academics, and they need to fill those gaps. So it depends on the school that you are applying to, the program you're applying to, and sometimes even what you're interested in researching. So if your professor feels there are gaps and you need to fill those gaps with some courses or, and all that, then they'll make the recommendation. So you have to find out what is required based on the school you are applying to. You want to do the PhD just in case. Well, if the just in case is your goal, then, if it's motivation enough for you to push through, then, that's your desire. You think you may need it, but you have to be clear, frankly. What is it in public service that makes you think you may need a PhD degree? Be clear on that. Be clear on that, so that when you are pursuing it, it's clear. So I don't believe in just in case. I think there's probably something that you have seen in public service that makes you think that having a PhD will be useful. So try and identify that thing, sit and think through it, and know that thing that makes you think you may need it, so that the journey will be, should I say, a little easier while you're pursuing it, because you have a goal, that you are trying to achieve.
Okay, I want to believe that his question has been answered. All right, so there's a comment. Says, I think one should know why they want to pursue a doctorate rather than it being another trophy they would want to add to the ones previously gained. Having a solid goal prepares one for the challenges as they come. Yeah, that's what we've been saying. That's very true. You need to have a goal. And that's what you're just saying to our friend here. Because of the nature of the program and how challenging it can get and traumatizing sometimes. You need to be very sure so that you don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Some other people on here, like Angela Kuma, Stella, who also, okay, Angie is still in the program. Stella completed, I think last year or two. So if you'd like to share with us your experiences, and then we can talk about funding. I know a friend who wants to know how they can get funding for a PhD. So if we can share. But before that, Benedict too is here. Thanks, Angie. I almost forgot. So who'll go first? Angie, can you share your experience so far shortly? And
I think it may be very different from Melissa's, and well, almost the same, but thank you for sharing, Melissa. And can you hear me?
Yeah, well, can we put face too, if it's possible?
Oh, my face not.
It's a Zoom situation.
Give me a second. Let me look a little nice.
There we go. Okay, we're waiting for you.
Okay, I'm looking a little sensible now. I think it's everything they said is very true. Thanks for sharing, Melissa and Baaba. I think it's been especially hard in a pandemic. I cannot begin to explain how hard it's been. And it's already a lonely journey. So having to do it in isolation has been like intensifying the struggle times 10 and pushing you on a bus on fire down a hill. I exaggerate, but I always give the analogy that my PhD for me is like being on the bus. Every time I catch a bus, I end up catching a bus in the wrong direction. So I do not know why. I'm not great at Google Maps, but for me, that's what my PhD has been like, catching a bus in the wrong direction, realizing halfway where I'm going, and then stopping and catching the bus in the right direction. But as I go along in the wrong direction, I learn about new places. I learn about new things. And if I ever have to go there again, it's easier for me. So that's what my PhD journey has been. Doing it in a pandemic has been hard. But I think also it's important the kind of supervisors that you have, or the kind of mentors that you have. My supervisors have been absolutely amazing and very encouraging, very nice. And so they make it relatively easier for me to do my work in spite of the fact that I have to deal with all these difficulties. I think it was Baaba that said that life also happens while you're doing the PhD. So that's always something to consider. I can't speak a lot about funding because mine is partially funded, but well, I can. It depends on what country you want to go to. I can give you a bit of insight on the UK, but the US, I'm sure Melissa will be able to give a bit of insight, and Baaba can do Ghana. But I think it's always important to have a support system. Currently, Benedict and I always try to put together a few writing groups, and that's how we are surviving occasionally. But the support system is always very, very important. So I think that's just about what I have to say. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you too very much. All right, Benedict, are you able to go? All right, there he is. Okay.
Hi. What am I supposed to share again? I'm sorry.
No.
So that's literally my experience. So my experience really is, I know you're asking me to share what my journey has been like and the experience has been like. And the big part of it, I think for me, has been being honest with myself and with my advisor and lab and telling them, I don't know, this thing, I don't know. And it's a very humbling thing, but I always had to tell myself, after all, I'm here to research into something and research and find answers for something. So yeah, I'm coming and I don't know. They expect you to be somewhere to begin with. That makes sense. But you are there because you don't know. And as time goes on, and I'm in the US, right? I'm in Washington, D.C. I find that typical American culture, they don't say, I don't know. Like if you ask a typical American a question, they won't say, I don't know. They'll find something to say. Hey, it doesn't matter how much non-far they are telling you, usually they'll find something to say. And, it's kind of like fake it till you make it. But that's not me, right? So I had to be honest with myself, be honest with my people, and be like, you know what, I don't know this. Can you give me some time? Or sometimes just walk up to someone and ask for help. In some cases, you look stupid for doing that. It's like you this PhD person, or you had a master's before coming here. You should know this. Why are you now coming to ask? But you ask, and then you are taught, and you move on. Right? It's better than going to spend hundreds of dollars on a project and making mistakes, huge mistakes along the way, just because you didn't know and you didn't ask. So that has been one of my biggest things. And like Angela said, yes, we have this thing going where we'll meet online and just write. And it's more like a community thing where we cope. This is part of how we cope, because it gets very lonely very quickly. And once you add this whole pandemic and working from home, so me, even when everybody is on campus and there was no COVID and everything, it was already very lonely for me, because most of what I do is just sitting alone in the lab. You are not talking to human beings. I don't do social science, I do genetics. So it's literally in a lab working with materials and DNA and all that. So it's already very lonely, late nights and all that. And then there's pandemic. Okay, so now the regulation is one person in the lab at a time, and no two people should cross paths. So the only time you meet someone is online. And then now they say, okay, now you can work from home. So, you are lonely plus lonely plus lonely. And you might think, oh, I'm fine being by myself. And I guess everybody is different. I thought I was fine being by myself, and I'm married and fine, I can be at home. After a while, I was losing my mind, and I can't always come home and dump it all on my wife. So I needed to find an outlet. So I found friends online. I found books to read that I never had time to read. So they pile up, and you actually never read them, but and then I also found a group that I played football with, and by football I mean English football, the whole world football, not American football. But this became a coping thing, and it's been helpful. And then also, my advisor has been very complicated. Very simple term, very complicated, right? She's a great academic advisor, but there are other aspects of the relationship that are very difficult. So I take what I can get, and I'm very careful about how I manage the rest. And then if I can't do something, I just say I can't do it. I go, I come back, I apologize, and I ask for help. And that has been my main experience. Funding wise, that's why one of the reasons why she's great. She makes sure I have everything I need. So, I mean, genetics is expensive. So the chemicals, the reagents, everything, she makes sure I don't even spend $1. So that's great. If I have to go for a conference, she makes sure it's paid for. So all that is good and, nice. Until you get to the rest of it. So some parts of it are very difficult, but clearly she has made that commitment that I will do my part to make sure that this guy succeeds in the lab. And that also means that it pushes her forward in her career. So that's a big thing. And she's doing that and she does it very well. There are other parts of the whole mentorship and supervisor thing that she's not great at. And she's acknowledged that she's not great at it. So, she's very good at what she's good at, and the rest is like, And so for those parts, I look for other people to get it from. Sometimes I have actually gone for therapy. I mean, professional therapy, where you pay a psychologist and be like, go and sit down and tell them all your stories. And if you like, you can cry, and they'll listen to you, give you advice, you go home, you're fine, go back to the lab the next day and continue. But it's not the kind of thing you do hiding in a corner alone. Chances are you will crash. And as I sit here today, I am losing my mind because there's a deadline I'm trying to meet. But it's part of it, and you just take it, you go along with it, and you ask for help. That's always my thing. Ask for help when you need it. Yeah, that's it for me. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I like the bit about therapy. I know here in Ghana we have some reservations.
Yeah, it feels like the therapy bit is kind of tricky sometimes, because it's like, oh, somebody said I'm scaring them. Please, there's nothing wrong with therapy. See, that's the thing Abigail was saying. Therapy is, if you have malaria, you won't be ashamed to walk into the hospital and ask for whatever they give you, right? Artesunate, amodiaquine, or chloroquine, or whatever. Right? Unfortunately, with mental illness or psychological stress or whatever you want to label it as, it's not very easy to diagnose yourself, right? I've been in biology for a long time, but I never try to mentally diagnose myself. The only thing I know works sometimes is get some good food, watch a funny show, laugh, and sleep. That seems to work, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes you need a professional who will sit down with you and be like, I think you're suffering from this. Maybe try this and this and that, right? And it's just the same as going to see a doctor, a medical physician, and being like, oh, I have pain in my chest, and they'll check and be like, oh, you have a tumor, or you're working too hard or something. So don't be ashamed about that. Most schools actually have it, and they have mental and mental health facilities for the students, and it's free. Like, it's paid for by your school insurance, which you paid for when you paid your fees and everything. But a lot of students have this stigma about it, so they never make use of it. It's bad, right? You will need it if you're trying to do a PhD and do it well. At some point, you'll be losing your mind. You will need help to find it again. So please make use of it.
Great. Thank you very much. We have some questions.
Abigail, let me just, based on what Benedict said, I just thought, let me just, give you an experience that I had. And this whole bit about psychological stress, everybody goes through it. And the other day I was telling Abigail that we don't talk about some of these things, and sometimes we take them for granted. But I had my share of psychological stress. My colleagues tell me, and to this day, I actually don't remember doing what I'm just going to tell you. So I was told that I told them I was leaving, right? I picked up my bag, my laptop, everything. Now, when you come into our office, some of you might know the School of Public Health, the Department of Biostatistics. So I walked out of my office, and instead of going out the door, I apparently went to the office behind me. So I got there, looked at them, I said, oh, okay. Then I turned and left. I have no recollection of doing this, but they tell me, and today we laugh about it. So that is like you do things. There was one morning I came to the office and there's a bathroom right next, close to our office. And I think the water in the cistern was running, but I could hear, to me, I heard drumming. So one of my colleagues was sitting there and I said, do you hear drumming and dancing? And this was like 7 a.m. in the morning. And I saw him look at me weird and turn, and he's like, so after about 5 minutes, he asked me, Baba, are you okay? I said, yes. Do you hear drumming and dancing? Then he said, no. But I was like, I can hear something. So I just walked out of the office. And then I was like, oh, the water in the cistern in the bathroom is running. And to this day, they always like, you have a mental problem. And we laugh about it. But I was so stressed. I wasn't sleeping. And the thing is, when you're doing it, you don't sleep. And when you don't sleep, you are stressed out. It took a toll on my health. I was losing weight. And I think I wasn't even looking in the mirror when I leave the house. All I know is I take my bath, I put clothes on, and I get out of the house. All I want to do is to get out of the house, go and do what I need to do. In the evening, I drive back home, and I had a routine: drive back home, come home, lie down on the couch, sleep, 11 p.m., wake up, work till about 2:30 in the morning, sleep, 6 a.m., back on the road. And it was like that. So by the time you go through about 6 months of this, something is happening to you and you don't even realize it. And so if you don't have a good support system, and unfortunately, as here in the University of Ghana, we have counseling services. It never even occurred to me that I had issues that I needed to sort out, But, you go through this process, and meanwhile, that, as I said, while you're going through this stress with the work, life is also going on, and life is also throwing challenges at you. So you have to take advantage of counseling services. If I knew then what I know now, I might have looked out for, just somebody to just talk to. And I remember after the whole experience, I was talking to my primary supervisor, who is still my friend and, my mentor. And he was like, oh, he will always check on me and, how's the work going? But we didn't talk too much about the personal side and how I was coping. And, we didn't talk too much about that. And that is something that your supervisors or your mentors will sometimes try to do, depending on the strengths. Some people are naturally not very nurturing, and some people are. So if you happen to have a supervisor who is nurturing, then you might benefit from that psychological help as well. But I think he didn't realize I was going through some of those issues. So he was like, oh, then there were things that we needed to talk about during that period that we didn't. So, that was it. But the psychological stress is real. It's very real. And, when you realize something is off, or somebody tells you that something is off, don't take it for granted and just pursue your program, but then try and get that support system that helps you to stay focused and to stay sane. They say it's permanent head damage, and they don't say that for it's not a joke.
Oh wow. I'm head on.
Not a joke. Yes, it's not a joke. But the thing is, you can survive. I always tell people that if people have gone through it, you can do it.
Yeah,
it's a process that you can't avoid it. If you go through it without feeling anything, then I'll question whether you actually went through the training. And it's a training. That is not a certificate. It is a training program that you go through. So you are trained mentally, you are trained psychologically, you are trained academically. So by the time you come out, something would have changed about you. All right. The way you think, the way you approach issues and all that, something will change about you. And it's because of that training that you go through. All right. So the psychological stress is very real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good one. Good one. Thank you. So there are a number of questions, but I want you to touch on the funding quickly, each of you, and right from before getting into the program and how it's sustained. Yeah, for those who want to know. Okay, so I start with Melissa. Yeah.
Sure. So I can start with funding for programs outside outside Ghana. So I think one thing that you need to pay attention to is the mentor-mentee relationship. There's a lot of emphasis placed on that in US schools, at least. I can speak from that perspective, because in Ghana, it doesn't tend to be so highly focused or highly prioritized. In the US, academics get funding, and then they determine who they are bringing in to study in a particular area or do a particular field of work. It also often means that you're working on their grant, and they need to report to funders. They need to let funders know what work has been done, who is doing that work, how much progress is being made on that work. And it means that they have to have a good relationship with whoever they're working with. So they place a lot of emphasis on the mentor-mentee relationship. So if you're looking for a program to just enroll in the US, it's helpful to find a program that you are very interested in. So when you're in the interview, people will hear your passion for that. If you have experience in that you're trying to build upon that experience, it goes a long way to show the person that this is somebody who is really enthusiastic about it, has done their homework in the area. And so if I take them on, they will continue to pursue the field, and they won't just come in and leave in the middle, and then I have to look for somebody else to continue the process, or I'll lose a year of funding or 2 years of funding. And then it's also helpful to find a professor who has some introduction into diversity. And by diversity, I mean international diversity. People who have never traveled before, have never worked with international students, often find it difficult to connect with international students. And so even in the interview, you'll be talking to them about your experiences, and you can feel that they're not with you, right? You've lost the interview at that point, because your experiences are not gelling with their experiences. You're not saying the exact things that they expect you to be saying. You don't have similar lived experiences. So that can impact your ability to strike a good relationship with them and then secure funding. So just think about the different areas that professors are specializing in, and you can find this on their website. So when you go to university websites across the US, you will find out who has funding. First of all, they'll let you know whether the person has a grant, how many years the grant is for. If you see that somebody has a grant that's supposed to elapse around maybe 2022, just for the sake of an example, you know that they will not be able to support you through 2024 if you're supposed to be doing your PhD for 3 years or 5 years or however many years you're supposed to be doing it. It's also helpful to know what the funding situation in the school is like, because sometimes the funding is not restricted to a particular professor, but to the school. And sometimes they will grant you, let's say, 4 years of guaranteed funding, which means that even if your professor cannot fund you within your 4 years of the program, the school will fund you. So you need to know that. But it also means that if they're telling you the program will last for 5 years, and yet your funding is guaranteed for 4 years, you have to start thinking in your very first year what you'll do in your 5th year. And so there, in that situation, you often have to find a campus job or work with another professor. And that's where, if you're in the States, finding someone who you have a good collaborative relationship with, working collaboration with, is helpful, because often you can switch over to their lab in your final year, and then that can help you secure some funding. In that same way, it helps to have some form of income while you're on campus. Most US programs come with funding, and they also have jobs associated with them. So you either work as a GTA, graduate teaching assistant, or a GRA, graduate research assistant. Often you don't have a choice in it, but maybe you can decide who you work with, but not whether you'll work or not. And if you have a choice of who you would work with, sometimes working as a GRA gives you an opportunity to get embedded in research and get some more research outputs that will help you in your trajectory. So those are some funding streams, those funding ideas that I have to share. Yeah. You know, if anyone else has something to share on funding.
Thank you. Baaba, do you have anything to add?
Okay, in Ghana, based on what I know, there are some people who are self-funded, all right, in their PhD programs. And that is the difficult part, because you're paying your fees and then you're paying for your research. Sometimes if you're not careful, it even impacts on the quality of work that you're able to do. But there are also a good number of people who also obtain funding, you know, through projects that professors might have. And I've seen that quite a bit. For example, my project was, my PhD was fully funded. You know, everything was paid for through the projects that my professor had. And alongside me, there were two other people. Oh, well, there were three of us, but were two other people who also had funding on the same project. So there were three of us who actually finished on this project. And I've seen a number of people also get the same opportunity. Usually I'll say that if you are interested in a PhD program, it also helps if you have a relationship with your professor that is, if you're going back to the same school, if you had a professor during your master's degree, it helps when you indicate your interest in a PhD program, so that when they are even applying for projects, for, you know, research projects, they could look at how they could incorporate PhD training in their projects. So sometimes you might even get partial funding, maybe have your research work taken care of, then maybe you might have to look out for your fees, or sometimes you might get everything taken care of. There are also instances where, especially when your research interest is in the same area as your professor, your research area could actually, or your research interest could actually be used as a response to a call, you know, for funding in a specific area. So when that happens, then you might be able to secure funding for your research work and maybe various aspects like attending conferences and things like that. So there are various ways that you could explore funding. At the University of Ghana, there really isn't any funding, as far as I know, that the university can give to PhD students. But, well, yeah, I think there are some programs. For example, there's a program called the Carnegie Program that provides funding for PhD students. So you apply for them based on their need. At some point, they might have a call for those in the health sciences. At some point, they might have a call for those in the humanities. And I see that the call varies every now and then. So sometimes they will have a call where they will expect that you would have finished your first year, and then they can fund you for your second, third, and fourth year. There are some instances where they also even fund people who are in their final year. So they will pay your fees, pay your the remainder of whatever research and, you know, your finishing fees, if I should put it that way. So the printing and all those things. So they may take care of your expenses in the final year. So there are various, you know, things that come up, but it helps when you are in touch with faculty members, because sometimes too, they are approached by people from, you know, other places who say, you know, I have funding and I would want to take some students. Do you know anybody who could be interested in this area? So if your former professor knows you have a research interest, they might be able to link you to another professor in another university. So those relationships work. So it helps when you don't burn your bridges when you're finishing your master's degree, because it really helps. Sometimes it can help you propel you to the next level. It might secure you funding, for something. So I think that's what I have to say about funding.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have some questions. Let me go up. Yes, Angie has also posted some links from the UK. Okay, one of them is jobs.ac.uk.com, and then findaphd.com, and Research Council funding, she says, is also currently available for Commonwealth students post-Brexit, but it's really competitive. Thank you very much, Angie. All right, let me go to, so there's one directly to Melissa. Let's see if there's one before then. Okay, so it says that, so there are two questions for you, Melissa. Will you recommend a PhD or a PsyD in psychology if you want to focus on clinical practice? And also, and she says she's also interested in working with children and developmental disorders, and is wondering how she's using the knowledge. Okay, she's wondering how you are using the knowledge you gained and how you're applying it after PhD.
Sure. Okay, so if you're only focused on clinical applications, then you can do a PsyD. But if you're also interested in finding out more about a particular area, doing any kind of research at all, it's important to do a PhD. And so often people who do master's degrees as well can work in the clinical field. And so you don't really need a PsyD. And so that is almost parallel to doing a master's degree. But if you do a PsyD, sometimes it takes almost as long as a PhD, but you will not have the capacity to do research if you do only a PsyD. So it's really focused on practical application, clinical application. But if you, let's say along the line, you find something interesting in your area of focus and you want to do research on that, a PsyD would not have equipped you with the skills that you need to do that research. So it really depends on what you want to do. Personally, how am I applying the knowledge that I've gained in my research? I'm a project manager for a project, a grant that spans 2 African countries, Kenya and Ethiopia, and we're rolling out an intervention for parents of children with developmental disabilities, specifically autism and intellectual disabilities in these 2 African countries. So I'm getting to use my experience there, helping with running this intervention, writing papers based on that, hopefully writing new grants based on that. I also collected my own data in Ghana in 2019, Ghana and Zambia in 2019, about parent expectations for children with developmental disabilities. And I focused on children with autism and children with intellectual disabilities and their parents. So those are some ways in which I'm using the knowledge that I've gained and hope to continue using it in an African context and also in an international context, because for me, I think that that's something that we're really missing. About 95% of children with developmental disabilities are actually from low and middle income countries, but most of the research that we have currently is from the West. And I think that it's important that we bridge the gap. There's a lot that we need to learn from the African context. And there's also a lot that people in the Western world can learn from the practice, some of the things that we do well. Not all of it is done well, I'll admit, but there are some things that we're doing that can also be beneficial to the Western world. And so that's what I'm hoping to highlight through my work. I hope that answered the question.
I hope so too. Yeah. I'm sure if she has any further questions, she would type them.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. I'm proud to say that I helped you a bit with the data collection when it came to
For sure. Yes, 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 yes. And you know, I acknowledged you in that paper.
You
Should send it
did?
to you. I did, yeah.
I'm famous. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So someone's also asking, I think, okay, for schooling outside, how do you attract the attention of a supervisor or mentor? Do all the schools in US require GMAT?
So now things are changing a lot. The schools are requiring different things. Some are not requiring anything at all. Especially with COVID, they know that there were some restrictions. People could not take tests as they would want to. And so it's really helpful to check the website of your school. Things get updated every other day. Now with COVID, we all know how things change. So it's good to just check the particular schools that you're interested in applying to, find out what their requirements are, and if possible, find out what the cutoff points for their requirements are. Let's say if it's a GRE, GMAT, or whatever it is, they often have information about the average scores of the people that get enrolled into the school. If your scores don't meet the cutoff point, don't let that deter you from applying anyway. It's just informative, but things happen, miracles do happen. So don't let that deter you too much. In terms of attracting the right professor, something I did, and I always advise people to do, is contact the professors personally. Their emails are on their websites for a reason. And if you want a professor to really take interest in you, sometimes it helps to send them a personal email. And if you send that personal email, it may go to their spam because it's the first time they're getting an email from you, and the subject line may not be a very catchy one. So it might go to spam, but follow up on that same email and let them know that you're really interested in it. Some of them will post on their website that they're looking for a student. If they're not looking for a student and they've been kind enough to respond to your email, please respond promptly. Ask them whether they know of any other professors who are also, or who might be interested in getting students in that particular year or in the next year. Sometimes it may take a while. You may strike up a relationship with them. You may get an opportunity to work with them even while you're not even a student. And later that could open doors. So there are some non-traditional ways of getting into a PhD. And even this approach that I'm saying is not a very non-traditional way. There are a lot of people in the US who do that because, as I mentioned before, the mentor-mentee match is really, really critical for people in the US. So they want to know that on a personal level, they can work with you. And sometimes it's sending that personal email that lets them know that you're really interested in this, you want to know them, you want to work with them, and you're in for the long haul.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to apologize. We are going a bit beyond that time. I would crave your indulgence. There are a number of questions. We'll go through them quickly, and then hopefully we can end soon. All right. Thank you, Melissa. Someone say, is it possible to keep a paying job while doing your PhD, or you have to save enough for the duration? Or then again, you cut all revenue streams, no formal work, and rely on support, handouts, sponsorship. Wow. Okay. What do you say? I think, Baaba, you can take that.
I would say it's not advisable. If you can, try not to keep your full-time job while you're doing your PhD, if you can. If it's not possible, then you have to, straddle the two and make the most out of it. Because when you're working full-time, it takes your attention. And if you're not careful, you might realize that you go a week, 2 weeks, and you wouldn't have done anything on your schoolwork. And Abigail will attest to this. I was working full-time while doing the PhD, and every time we'd go for our project meeting, myself and my other colleague PhD students, Prof will ask us, So what have you done? You have to give an update. And sometimes you realize that 2 weeks, you haven't even looked at what you're supposed to be working on. And then he will tell us, when you are coming to University of Ghana, tell your family that you are going to school. Don't say you are going to work. Because that mentality, knowing that you are going to school will help you ensure that you are going to do school work. If you say you are going to work, you'll go and work and then not do any school work. So if you can, but if it's not possible, then I guess you have to you will have to do the two and then try and survive. But you might have to cut off other things or other revenue streams that will take up your time. Because mind you, you also don't want to be doing this PhD, it's like never-ending PhD. You don't want to be tagged as that person who started a PhD and doesn't seem to be getting anywhere close to the end. So you might have to, if you have a solid revenue source, all right, and then you have others, the little ones, you can just tell yourself that you cut those off while you're doing the program, and then make sure you have time for your PhD program. Yeah, that's what I'll say.
Thank you. Yeah, Benedict, you have your hand up.
Hi. Yeah. So thanks, Abigail. So I raised my hand because basically what we are talking about at this point that Baaba just spoke on and Melissa also did is funding, right? And Melissa spoke about kind of almost the traditional ways of getting funding. And permit me to just add these, right? So a very wise person and a few other wise people actually gave me this advice, which ended up helping me a lot. They were like, you know what, just go and ask. The worst they can do is say no. It does nothing to you. Right? That's the worst that can happen. I mean, even if they think you're a fool for coming to ask, they'll say no. And then you walk away and you go try somewhere else. And I'm saying this about funding. So the current lab in which I am is not actually the lab I was built to be in when I entered the school. The professor who admitted me is completely different from this one. And I had actually written to this one. And again, the whole thing about finding their emails is a big deal. So I found this person's email, my current professor, before I had been admitted, and wrote to her. And she was like, oh, it's too early and I'm not interested in blah, 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 blah. So that went to rest. I entered the school where I was doing my rounds, struggling here and there, knocking my head. And then we crossed paths again. And she was like, you never contacted me again when I said I didn't have time. I was like, oh, I thought you would contact me, So one thing led to another. I ended up in the lab and I literally directly asked her for money in terms of funding. And she said, oh, okay. So she planned for me to sign a contract, and part of that contract would involve how much, in what my financial responsibility is and what is hers and all that. So that was sorted, right? There are other situations where you might have to walk up to someone. Like I went to another famous professor, Fatima Jackson, and I was like, hey, you know what? So I'm doing this, I'm thinking of doing this project. This is my interest, all of that. What pace might you have in your lab for me to do this? And if there's a chance, is there a way we could talk about funding? There were some of them who were not receptive to this. All they cared about was your skills and how they will use you, period. They didn't care about what you will get from them. And there were some who were like, I'm sorry, I don't really have anything, right? But there were some, like my current professor, who was like, she didn't really want to talk about it, but she would make sure she's not cheating you. So she gives you your due. And like someone like Jackson, she won't give you anything, but she'll point you in the right direction, right? So there were all these possible things, right? And you go to, let's say, the administration of the graduate school and ask the people who were there. They know a lot. The admin people, they know a lot. Somebody gave me a folder like that big of funding institutions, and a lot of them were linked to female stuff and girl child, there was a lot of it in there. So yeah, I didn't qualify for a lot of them, but there were one or two in there which I qualified for, right? So you want to ask. And that also ties over into the whole thing of, should you keep a full-time? You see how before she answered that question. Look, the PhD is one of the hardest things you will do in your life if you decide to do it, period. And so if the PhD itself is supposed to be full-time, and then you do another full-time job, chances are you will crash and you might mess up both of them. So you might get fired from your job and you might get fired from the PhD, or you drop out. Ideally, maybe don't be doing a full-time job. If you have a small side gig, maybe fine, but like a full-time job, that would be very risky. But it also depends on who you are and the kind of work you are doing, the kind of PhD you are doing, right? I don't know much about the social sciences, but like what I am doing, there really is no chance to do another thing. Like you're literally in the lab all the time on a microscope. Even if I got a remote job to work on a computer, I don't know when I'll do it. Maybe, I don't know, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. when I get home. But as it is, I get like 2 to 4 hours of sleep, right? So when am I going to do that job? It's just not practical. So it depends on what you're doing. And sometimes if you're lucky, you might get a job in a company that is willing to pay for your PhD. So, so that's a funding thing, right? And I've seen a company here in the US was willing to do that with me, but I realized their motives were not very clean. So I opted for what I have now, but they were willing to pay me quite a huge sum to work for them while doing my PhD. And that was because part of the data I'll be working on would be DS, right? And in the end, there were a lot of weird contracts going on. I opted out. But you want to, again, ask, look, it doesn't hurt. The worst anybody can do is say no. And you say thank you and you go your way, period, right? And then you go somewhere, you try again. But if you don't ask, you shoot yourself in the foot. If you don't ask, you miss an opportunity that it might just be there, just waiting for you to ask, So that's my 2 pesos for that.
Thank you. That's actually thousands of dollars. All right. The same person is asking, how do you manage all this stress without compromise on family responsibilities, especially if you have very active and demanding dependents? And he's talking about giving attention and financial support as well to these dependents. I think, Benedict, you're a new father. I don't know whether you can help us with that.
Okay, so the fatherhood part, I'm still learning, so I'm not sure I can comment very loudly on that.
Okay.
But that said, the whole family thing and balancing the whole family part. So I set some clear boundaries, which I wasn't very good at following, but I set them anyway. And one of them was like, I don't take work home. Now it's very easy to say this, I don't take work home. So when I'm at home, I'm at home. I don't work. I found out in a very short time that did not work, at least not for me. So what I did was, when I get home from the lab, as soon as my wife gets home, my laptop, my books, everything, they disappear. Like I'm home, And I'm a night person, so eventually she'll go to sleep. Then I'll go back and do what I have to do. And everybody is different, right? So you might have to arrange with your family people that, okay, when I get home, like for example, my advisor, she tells me, and I know she's a very family-oriented person, so she leaves the lab like 4:30 p.m. Then she'll be home, let's say, somewhere around 5. And from 5 till like 8:30, you cannot reach her. Like it's impossible. If it's an emergency, call her phone. But apart from that, you won't get her. And really what's happening is that when she leaves at that time, it's time for her children, and her husband, nothing else. And then after 9 p.m., she might check her emails and maybe read things that you have sent her, right? So that's her thing. And she's been doing this for years and they work, right? So you have to find for yourself how you do it and be realistic. Look, you're not a robot. You have to know your bounds, your energy levels, and be like, okay, this is how far I can go. And therefore, this is how much I can do. And then ask for help from your family people. In my case, my spouse, right? So I try to keep certain things that are too stressful away from her. But sometimes I literally go to her and ask for help. I'm like, I've been trying to do this, I can't do it. Can you help me? Right? So sometimes I mix it up, but sometimes most of the time I put it aside. And then I try to be just a husband in the house. We watch TV, we laugh and all that. She's asleep. Okay. 2 hours later, I'm sitting there. I'll work till almost morning. And then I go back to sleep. We wake up together. It's like but she knows I do that, right? So that's normal, right? When this child was born, that became a thing that just doesn't work because I am the night guy, so I keep him at night, and children have to be fed every 2 or 3 hours, that kind of thing. So I bottle feed him at night, from like midnight till morning, and so my attempt to work at night really don't work because if there's a night that he's crying a lot, I can't work. I have to hold him and try to calm him down. Sometimes you get frustrated, you put him down and try to concentrate on your work. It doesn't work. So it all depends, but you have a schedule, have boundaries, ask other people what they do, ask for help. Always remember that, ask for help. Like, look, sometimes you get someone just to come and stay with you for a weekend and take care of them. And so you're free to just stay in the lab for 3 days. And then you come back Sunday morning, you do church together, you spend the rest of Sunday at home together, right? So you have to look for the opportunities you get and take them. And then be thankful for what you get, but plan for what you don't have and see how you can create it. And ask for their inputs, like, how do I do this? If I'm at home, what do I need to do that shows you that I'm at home? And they might be like, well, can we all eat dinner together? Maybe that's all they require from you. So make sure you get home in time for dinner. Then after dinner, you can go and do your thing. After dinner, you all watch one TV show together, and then you can go and do your studies. So
Hello? Hello?
no idea what happened there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I finished what I was saying. I'm not sure exactly when I disappeared.
It's like I was sitting down to watch a show together. Can I be heard though?
Is
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
there? Oh yeah, Abigail, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for the answers to the question. I believe the one who asked the question is satisfied. I want to believe. All right. Baaba, I know your husband was in and out of the country, but how was it like with you?
I'll say that was tough, and I also didn't realize how challenging it was until after a period. But when I started my PhD, he was here in Ghana. So I think 2 years into the program, yes, 2 years into the program, then he traveled out. But when he was here, I think because he was a motivator in starting, he was very supportive. We don't have kids, but he was very supportive of the entire process. And I think there was one time he was telling me that Professor Margaret Japon, you remember we had dinner with Prof. Japon when the MRC people came. Yeah. And he told me that she told him that the PhD is very difficult, so he should try as much as possible to support me through it. And he didn't even tell me this after the dinner. And it was just, I think it was, I got to know this when I completed. And I was telling him, I'm so grateful for all the support he gave me. And he was like, yeah, you know, Prof. Japon told him that when we had dinner. That was the very beginning, at the very beginning of the program. So he kept that at the back of his mind, and he was there. You know, there were times where I would get home too tired to even talk, and I'll just be sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV with him, and I'll be gone. And he will just wake me up, and then we'll go to sleep, knowing that I'll wake up at dawn and work. There were times where, because I was working full-time and also doing the PhD full-time, working through the night became a regular thing. And there were days where I'll be working, sitting on the dining table working, and he will just sleep on the carpet in the living room with me. And I'm like, why don't you just go to bed? And he would tell me, oh, whenever you're ready. And sometimes this would be like 2 a.m. So he will sleep on the carpet. And for him, it was like he was supporting me through that. So all through that, so maybe 2 a.m., then I'll wake him up that I'm ready to go to sleep. And then we'll go to sleep, and that would be it. And when he wasn't even here, the constant, you know, asking, how is it going? You know, and we kept talking. He would ask, how is it going? You know, so this paper that you're writing, how is it going? Okay, this and that. So that constant checking up and seeing, you know, so you're having this difficulty. Who is supporting you? What are you doing? Have you spoken to your supervisor about it? You know, just checking in and making sure that, you know, even though he wasn't physically here, that constant support was there. So it really helped. It was tough not coming home to talk physically, because then again, when the person is outside, you have the time difference to deal with. So when I'm ready to talk, you know, he might be working or something. So we had to work out some schedule. He'll be at work and then we'll be on the phone, talk a little bit and all that. So, but just having it at the back of my mind that he was there to support me was really great. And then of course, my parents and my siblings are all here as well. And they were also so supportive. I remember at some point, during this process, we were attacked by armed robbers at the very beginning. So I lost my laptop and my phones and everything. And then I got a laptop later. I think sometime when I was actually writing up my results, the laptop died on me. My dad had a new laptop and he sent it to me from Takoradi to Accra, just so that I could get my work going, because he called me one day. I said, oh, I was working late because I don't have a laptop to work on when I get home. He said, what, you don't have a laptop? I said, well, this is what happened. By the next day or 2 days later, he brought me a new laptop to continue working because he didn't want me staying late in the office and all that. So that family support was really, really, really great. And it really helped me get through that period. So yeah, it was challenging, but you know, having that support really, really helped. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Melissa, I remember you mentioned that Phoebe was your great support as well.
Yeah, definitely my backbone. But I also want to say that God really provides. And so sometimes we may not have the family that we're looking for, or, you know, your family may not be close by, just like Phoebe was not close to me and she wasn't always available with the time difference and everything. But God really, really provided for me. He gave me friends that became even, you know, they became family to me, and they still are family to me. I had keys to their house. I would go to their house morning, noon, night, you know, and we would talk about everything. And there were times when I even felt like they were bothering me because they would always invite me for lunch or dinner, or say, Melissa, what are you having for breakfast? I'm like, oh, breakfast, that's a thing. Okay. You know, so things like that. But they really kept me going. They And I really owe a lot to them. It's been wonderful to have them. And I'm very, very grateful to God for them. They really helped me keep sane. And that was also another thing I remembered while people were talking about the social support, not being isolated. And a part of it is not allowing yourself to get isolated, because the PhD journey can be isolating. You feel like you have so much work. There are times when during the academic semester, there was almost a 2-week period every semester when Phoebe will be like, I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks. You know that, right? I'm like, yeah, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. But in those times, the people who were closest to me would prevent me from just finding a bubble and just staying in there forever and not coming out. And sometimes you think it's helpful because it gets you productive and you're able to get the work out. And then you realize after a month that you really haven't said hello to anybody, and people are not just sitting down waiting for you to come back and say hello when you're ready, on your terms. So it's good to have those people who draw you out and make sure that you do stuff. So that family disturbance, can be really good too sometimes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So Lassie says, Melissa, I'm your small boy. Don't forget me.
You're my big man, more like it.
I
definitely won't forget.
That's what Rosemary says. There's also Social Science Research Council by Next Generation Social Sciences in Africa program that gives funding for research proposals, field research, writing funding, etc. Thank you very much. And she also goes on to say, I agree with Baaba. I worked full-time while on my PhD. It was research without coursework with very busy professors. That was self-driven and hard. So I took a long time on the program, but I finally finished. I hadn't worked long enough to earn steady leave, and I couldn't afford leave without pay. Thank you, Auntie Rosemary. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen Selassie's comments, Melissa. And David says, so with all this insight, I'm confused if I should go further. God, please lead. As Rosemary says, I finally qualified for a year study leave to travel for data collection and part of writing. We thank God. Benedict, God bless your husband. That's to Baaba. Okay. Oh, okay. Senna saying, I don't know about the rest of you guys considering PhD, but the experiences being shared doesn't make it attractive for me. Senna, don't give up. You can see them now. They've made it. They've come out of it. They are in their rightful minds. So don't give up. Angie says, yes, God always sends helpers. It's a rewarding experience, being able to contribute knowledge and expand information on a particular topic. There's a lot of work and you have to be prepared for it. So now kudos to all the PhD doctors here and out there. This must have been one trying and rewarding period. And there are so many skills you pick up as you go along. The networking experience is amazing and you learn so much about yourself as well during this period. Most importantly is it's a great time to get closer to God because you need him. And so I would rather say you should let these words prepare you for the task ahead. Yes, nothing is easy, but with God, all is possible. Auntie Emily says, PhD is calling. Yes. If he has to do it, it's calling you. Take the bull by the horns and go. All right. Today we've gone way past our time, but I think it's been worth it. Thank you all so very much. Baaba and Melissa, please, do you have any final remarks for us before we sign up?
Maybe I'll just say that the journey is really varied. Just like some people were saying, we've shared so much that they're not even sure whether they should pursue it or what have you. Just like we shared with the funding streams and all these things, we'll all have our stories. We'll all go through different things. We'll all have our options that will come to us, and we'll pick and choose based on what's relevant for us, what's useful. And so just enjoy the ride. When and if you decide to go on this journey, enjoy the ride knowing that some of the things that we have shared will become familiar. Some of the things you will, travel and tour your own path and do what you need to do. But hopefully some of the things that we've shared here will be beneficial. And I'm available if you want to talk about this more, if you have some questions along the way. Abigail has my contact information. I'm happy to provide insight if I have the insight. And if I don't, like Benedict, I'll say I don't, but maybe I know someone who can help. Okay. And thanks, Abby. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to share.
Thank you too. Thank you too. Baaba.
Okay. I similar to what Melissa said. I think it's I've told a number of people that I will never sugarcoat the experience, and I'll always say it as it is so that you know what you're getting yourself into. But you should always see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. If you know what you're getting yourself into, you are prepared mentally, in all ways to as you go through that journey. So when it starts happening, it's not a big surprise to you. You know that, okay, I've heard this before. I'll get through it. It's challenging, but then I'll get through it. So it helps you prepare. Even the experience after the PhD is also another experience. But I am so grateful to God every day for what he has done and what he is doing. And I always say that I know he's still taking me somewhere and I'm not exactly sure where, but he should just lead me. So just allow God to lead you. He'll direct you. He'll bring the helpers you need. He'll bring you the helpers you need, definitely. If you want the helpers, unless you reject them, but he'll bring you the helpers. Because when he says that this is where I'm taking you, it's said in the word of God that God will never allow you to go through something that is stronger than you. I've forgotten the exact words, but I'm sort of paraphrasing. But whatever you go through, he enables you. When he says he's taking you to a destination, he enables that experience. He'll bring the helpers along the way. Sometimes if it's just somebody checking up on you and saying, hey, how are you doing? I had professors in our school who were just checking on me. And, it was like they just were interested in my progress, and sometimes I even felt bad when I didn't have a positive story to tell them, So, it will turn out well. Don't be scared. If it's something that you've been dreaming about, pursue it, and God will bring the help as you go along. Just don't give up and don't have fancy ideas about it. When you do a PhD, and it's not like you're going to change the world. You realize that what you're doing is a drop in the ocean. But whatever drop it is, there is some little impact, even if it means giving advice to another person, so that they can also go through that journey. That is the impact that God wanted you to make. So be interested in that little thing that you can add. It's not about changing the world. All right, because Jesus has already done that. You have something small. There's something small that God wants you to do. Focus on that thing and don't have grandiose ideas. It will help, because for me, it's been a humbling experience as well. So just come on board, and like Melissa said, I'm also ready to talk. If you want to talk, if you have questions, I'm always ready to help you through that. All right, because we've been there, so you can get there too. Okay, thank you.
I'll share your email addresses with them later.
Sure, no problem.
Sure. Thank you all so very much. God bless you. This has been really good. I'm also going to go back and revise my notes. Okay. We have a few comments. I'll read the last two. It says, we appreciate all our resource persons. God bless you. I joined today's session because of Melissa. Okay. So I say I've been very biased here. Okay. God bless you all. God bless you. Right? And Senator Benedict, Charlie, more grace. Jane Shekan. Oh, you guys. All right. Thanks, and please don't forget all the chats we had and continue to pray. All right. We'll end it here. Thank you all very much. Baaba, can you please pray with us?
All right. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for this opportunity to share our experiences, to encourage and to get other people thinking possibly about what you want them to do as well. I pray, Father, Lord, for direction. I pray for your leading in all that we do. Father, help us, oh God, to know and to walk in the purpose that you have set for us. And at the end of the day, let all that we do glorify your name. We thank you that you hear us. And we thank you that you answer us. We thank you that you lead us daily. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. This has been the IMANI Reveals show. And this is where we speak, we are real so that we can live. Thank you all very much for coming, and have a blessed week. And God willing, we'll meet again next week. Bye. So unmute your mics, activate your videos, and let's say bye to you.
Bye.
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 Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Baaba.
Thank you, Abby.
Have a great evening.
Yes, I'll get in touch.
Bye.
Abby,
Melissa, bye.
take care.
Bye.
Nice to meet you, Baaba.
Nice to meet you too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, Pete.
Very nice to do this with you, Baaba.
Yes. Nice meeting
Bye,
you.
Adelaide.
Hopefully one
Bye,
day we'll-
Baaba.
Bye.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
Bye.
send you guys your contact so that you can be in touch. Melissa and
Sure.
Baaba.
All
That's
right.
fine.
Sure.
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Lisa,
Bye.
bye-bye. Good night, people.
Bye now, Nali. Bye. See,
Bye.
my rock. I wasn't lying, guys. There she is.
What did Phoebe say?
I said bye-bye. Good night.
You know, she's here, right here. When I know she's tired. But anyway, love you, dear. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
Hey.